Listen to Rob Rossi and RockerMike on the only podcast that I'll hear. That won't make me wanna rip off my ears. Oh, the Rock Show, 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 the Rock Show. Oh, I want the Rock Show.
Hey, hello, people, and welcome to another episode of the Rockshow, episode 161, and we'll talk about Foghat.
And today's episode is sponsored by Park Dental Care in Richmond Hill, Queens. 718-847-3800. Greatest dentist in the world. He takes all insurances. So, yeah, we're talking about Foghat today, Rob.
Look at these pretty white. Thank you to the dentist.
Yes. Gene K. Affleck.
Yeah, look at these teeth. We got more teeth than brains.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So we're talking about the band Foghat today, and I have to admit this is kind of like a labor of love doing this podcast today. Foghat was one of the first bands that I ever really got into as a kid, and they're kind of forgotten a little bit in the scheme of things. Other than Slow Ride and maybe Fool for the City, those two songs, people kind of forgot about Foghat. But at one point in the 1970s, Foghat was like the hardest working band in rock and roll. Okay, these guys were touring pretty much every month out of every year, recording at the same time, nonstop touring, and really just getting their music out there. A lot of bands like that, but Foghat was definitely one of them. And Foghat also did something that I find very interesting, Rob. Okay, they kind of tried to change their sound. Now they're a 70s band.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely. They started about 1971. And I'll get into the history, but by the late 70s, obviously music was changing. Punk and new wave had come in and influenced a lot of things. And what I found, and like I was a fan, so I was aware of this, but what I found in researching for the show is that Lonesome Dave Peverett, who was the singer, really kind of wanted to take the band in almost like a new wave direction.
Ooh.
Okay, and there's really very few bands that have done this. I can't think of too many, and it caused a lot of turmoil in the band. It caused a lot of fans to kind of say fuck them. They change their sound. But I'm going to put this on the record right now as RockerMike. Okay, I kind of like some of the later stuff that they did. And not all of it. Some of it is not great, but they have such a solid discography, especially the first two albums.
Dude, but they got like what, 8 gold albums? Like, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
One platinum, double platinum.
Yeah, they were at one point, between Fool for the City and the Foghat live album, which we talked about not too long ago as one of the best live albums ever. They're definitely a band that you got to pay attention to. They were blues, they were rock, but then they went in this other direction a little bit in the early 80s, late 70s, and I find it interesting because it's very hard to pull off, to kind of change your sound and keep your fans. But they were doing what they wanted to do, and I respect that. So,
and they had a lot of lineup changes.
Yeah,
too,
they did. Yeah,
it's crazy.
They did have a lot of lineup changes, and they still play around today. And Roger Earl, the drummer, is the only original member. They've got all new guys now from different bands that have come in. But I saw them about 4 years ago at BB King's before that club closed, and they were great.
That was a good venue, BB King's.
BB King's was a very good venue. Yeah, I missed that. So one thing you have to understand about Foghat is that they kind of formed from a split up between members of Savoy Brown. Savoy Brown was an English blues band, kind of fronted by guitarist Kim Simmons. Okay, he had different lineups, different singers. He was a guitar player, great guy. Okay, and Foghat consisted of vocalist guitarist Lonesome Dave Peverett, Roger Earl on drums, Tony Stevens on bass, and they all left Savoy Brown in 1971. Now, Rod Price, the lead guitarist, who was an amazing guitar player, he played guitar and he was great on the slide guitar as well, which is something that you play kind of sitting down.
Yeah.
Okay, and you slide. Okay. Now he was brought into the lineup when Foghat was put together in January of 1971. Now, the name Foghat, people always wonder where the hell that come from. Okay, it was something that Lonesome Dave Peverett and his little brother John came up with while playing Scrabble one night when they were kids.
Yeah.
They actually had that name for a long time.
All right.
Okay. Now, in fact, Dave Peverett used to go by the name of Junior Foghat when it was kind of like before he got the name Lonesome Dave. He was going by the name of Junior Foghat as a kid. Now, Dave was born April 16th, 1943 in England, and he was an avid blues and rock and roll fan. Basically was self-taught on guitar. He was in several like pub and club circuit blues-based bands before he joined Savoy in 1967. Now, he was the vocalist and rhythm guitarist, blues guitar legend, and again, Kim Simmons. You have to listen to Savoy Brown to appreciate him. He was the start of Savoy Brown. Now, bassist Tony Stevens, he was born September 12th, 1949. He was the principal songwriter for Savoy Brown. They did a lot of covers, but they also wrote a lot. He wrote a lot of the tunes, and by the late 60s, Savoy Brown had a pretty decent following in the U.S. as a British blues band. They were big in England.
Not bad.
Okay. Yeah. Their most popular album in the U.S. was an album called Looking In. And an interesting side note is that Cynthia Albitron, okay, who's also known as Cynthia Plasticaster,
okay,
she made a mold of Tony Stevens for her collection. A mold of what? His Johnson. Okay. Cynthia Plasticaster passed away a few months ago, so shout out to her and rest in peace.
Hey, do you realize it was the 50th anniversary of Foghat in 2021?
Yeah. Their first album came out. Yeah.
I didn't realize there was, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Long time. Now, drummer Roger Earl was born May 16th, 1946. He joined Savoy Brown in 1968. He unsuccessfully auditioned for the Jimi Hendrix Experience and didn't get in that, but he got into Savoy Brown. He actually is the only member of Foghat to be on drums, despite their many lineup changes. He's been consistent during the whole time. Rod Price, okay, he was born November 22nd, 1947. He was in the British blues band Black Cat Bones.
Black Cat Bones.
Originally replacing guitarist Paul Kossoff, who went on to start the band Free. And Paul Kossoff would die a few years later, unfortunately. But Price recorded the album with Black Cat Bones called Barbed Wire Sandwich, which was released in 1969. It was a total commercial flop. And basically, the band disbanded after that.
Right away.
Yeah, not too long. And by the end of 1970. Now, Foghat would form in January of 1971. Shortly after, they would be signed to Bearsville Records. Bearsville was a new label founded in 1970 by Albert Grossman. He was an American entrepreneur and manager of kind of bands in the rock and folk scene.
Okay.
He managed some acts like Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Bob Dylan's band, The Band.
The band.
Okay, right. Now, Bearsville Studios were located in Bearsville, New York, which was about 2 miles west of Woodstock. Foghat would soon relocate
To New York.
to United States. Yeah, and they would be New York based, which I always thought was cool because I would kind of like hear little things. They would be recording sometimes out in Port Jefferson, out on Long Island, and I would hear little things like, oh, they're working on something, or stuff like that. Yeah, it was cool. I always wanted to meet one of them, but I never did. Now, this is the lumped up episode of Foghat.
Yeah, it's very lumped up.
Despite the relocation of Foghat to the States, they would record their self-titled debut album at Rockfield Studios in Wales.
Wow, they went back to...
Now, who was at Rockfield? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Dave Edmunds.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He produced them, right?
He produced this album, the first album by Foghat.
Yeah.
And the opening track on this album was Willie Dixon's I Just Want to Make Love to You, which the Stones made famous.
Yes.
But their version is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I think they were the best one.
Especially the live version from Foghat Live, but the studio version, there's nothing wrong with it. It got some radio play, that track. It did very well. And they kind of were becoming popular in a small way. The album also featured a remake of the Savoy Brown bluesy song about the road called Leavin' Again.
Leave it again.
Okay. And it also features a classic blues track called Sarah Lee that Rod Price plays slide guitar on, and he was known for that. Now, released in July of 1972, the album would peak at 127 in the U.S.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad for a debut, but would get to number 23 in Australia. What is it about those horses?
Australia,
right? What is it?
You know what? British and Australia, they always like those bands, man, and they get high ratings.
Yeah. We're big in Australia.
We're big everywhere.
Now, Foghat hit the road after this, and their popularity grew.
Yeah.
Okay. They were being quickly known as a band to see live. Their second album technically is also self-titled as Foghat, but every one of their fans know it as Rock and Roll because there's a picture of a rock and there's a picture of a bread roll on the album cover. Okay. That was released on March 1st, 1973. Produced by Tom Dawes. Who was Tom Dawes? Tom Dawes was in The Circle, Syrkle. They had that famous song, Red Rubber Ball. Okay. Tom Dawes was in Circle, and he produced that album for them. I find that a very interesting production choice.
Yeah.
Okay. But the record sales for this album would be better than the first album. Okay. The album peaked at number 67 in America, basically on strength of the tracks like Ride, 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 Long Way to Go, It's Too Late, and a blues cover of I Feel So Bad, originally recorded by Chuck Willis. These guys were deep in the blues. Yeah. Deep in the blues.
But these guys were also taking albums back to back, right? Like
6 months apart.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, these were the days when bands recorded, toured, recorded while touring, slam another album out. I mean, this is like serious shit. And all you new jacks out today, you better pay attention. That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it.
You know?
Making albums. Take out one album. You know what? 6 months. You know, we need more income. Take out another album.
Exactly. Now their third album.
So in that case, how did they do a deal for them?
Well, Bearsville loved them. Okay, and they just probably did 3 record deals at a time, 3 records, kept it going. They were with Bearsville for a long time, even after they kind of started to wane a little bit. Bearsville stayed with them. Yeah, very cool. You know, their third album was called Energized, and that was released in January of '74. It would reunite Tom Dawes again with Foghat. They had tracks like Honey Hush, Home in My Hand, Wild Cherry, and a cover of That'll Be the Day by Buddy Holly.
Great song.
That would bring Energized to number 34 on Billboard. They're moving up.
That's not bad.
Number 38 in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. The band was relentlessly touring as well. Relentlessly, like playing New York City 3-4 times a year.
Wow.
Okay. Rock and Roll Outlaws would be their fourth album, Foghat. Okay. And Bearsville would put it out again. They was, like I said, they were still on Bearsville. October of 74, that came out. And that was their second release of the year. Most of the tracks were Lonesome Dave compositions, or they were co-written by Rod Price. Tony Stevens, unfortunately, has no writing credit on this album. He did on the past. Tracks like 8 Days on the Road describe their hard touring lifestyle. Interesting, there's a track was called Rock and Roll Outlaw that was written by ex-Rascal Felix Cavalieri and Carmen Moore. Felix Cavalieri of the Rascals. Okay, the album peaked at number 40 in the States. So again, you had a top 40 album once again.
Again, that means they're moving up.
They're moving on up. They're moving on up. The next album was called Fool for the City. One of my all-time favorite albums. It was released on September 15th, 1975, and it was recorded at the studios in Vermont. The album was produced by Nick Jameson. The band had come off an extensive tour at that point, and Tony Stevens would quit the band due to that. Okay, It was, he didn't contribute much on the last album, and then the touring was getting to be too much. These guys were really like, hitting the road, 300 days out of the year kind of thing.
So he wanted out then. He wanted the rest.
Yeah, but this was the album that broke them. And he left in the middle.
Yeah.
Good guy. He would come back later, and we'll talk about that. But Nick Jameson would then kind of, he produced the album, and he would play the bass parts.
Oh, shit.
For most of it.
Okay.
Now, the album was their biggest studio album at that point, getting to number 23 in America. The hit single was Slow Ride.
Yep.
You know that song.
Yes.
All right. And that would peak at number 20, that single. Yep. The title track, Fool for the City, would get to number 45. Now, the album, which is one of my favorite album covers of all time, it shows drummer Roger Earl sitting in the middle of the street on a soapbox in front of 229 East 11th Street in Manhattan, okay, which was right around the corner from Foghat's American office.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a classic story where they opened the manhole up, and Roger Earl, who was this bell-bottom, long head, walrus mustache kind of guy, okay, with like a floppy hat on.
Yeah.
And he's sitting on a fucking soapbox, and he drops a fishing pole down into the manhole, and two cops see him, and they go, "You got a fishing license?" Right? And they're like, "What are you doing?" You know? Right? So he's like, "Oh, we're shooting an album cover." So they let him do it. They didn't give him a hard time. They let him do it, and it became one of the iconic 70s rock album covers. And they took pictures with them, like there's pictures of Roger Earl handcuffed and stuff like that. Yeah. New York's finest, always the best. Okay. Now, a side note about Nick Jameson, the producer, and he played a lot of bass on this album, is that he has an extensive acting career. And I know you know this, and you just might not know it's him. Okay.
What's he in?
He appeared on 24 as the Russian president Yuri Suvorov.
Oh, okay.
Okay, for 3 seasons. Okay. But he also was on King of Queens, and he does voiceovers a lot.
Wow.
Okay. He did the voiceover for Palpatine in Star Wars Clone Wars.
Oh,
the cartoon.
wow.
The cartoon.
Yeah.
That's Nick Jameson, the producer to Foghat, who produced a lot of their albums.
So that's what he's doing now.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to pay some bills and have a beer, and we'll be right back in a minute. All right, we're back talking about Foghat. Welcome to the Rock Show. Ready to crack this beer, Mr. Rossi?
Oh, yeah. I'm almost ready to crack a beer. Oh, yeah.
Salud, brother. Now, we were just talking about Fool for the City, which is one of their greatest albums. But in November of 1976, the follow-up for Fool to the City was released. That was called Night Shift. That was the first album to include their new bass player, Craig McGregor. All right, because Tony Stevens left. It was produced by Dan Hartman, who had written Free Ride as a member of the Edgar Winter Group.
Nick Jameson was never part of the group.
He would be at times, but not for touring and later on.
But it's more for albums. Like if they were recording an album, he was there. He could
if he produced, he could fill in. But they needed somebody for the road.
Okay.
So Craig McGregor became that guy.
Okay.
All right. Now, Dan Hartman produced this album, and he was in the Edgar Winter band, and he wrote Free Ride. Gonna take a free ride.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Okay. Now, this album would make it to number 36, and it basically was a very hard rock album. It was a little less bluesy.
Yeah.
You had a song called Driving Wheel, Foghat's version of Take Me to the River, Dump Me in the Water by Al Green originally.
I love that.
Talking Heads has that great version. Okay, now Dan Hartman. Do you remember that name?
Dan Hartman.
He had that song in the 80s, I Can Dream About You.
Oh, yeah, that was a great song.
Yeah, that was Dan Hartman. Yeah, that was like a movie soundtrack or something.
Oh, yeah, that was the one with the band, like the black band?
Yeah, it was a black group, yeah.
I
forget the name of the movie.
What was the name of that? That was a great movie.
Yeah, Dan Hartman, okay?
Was it The Dream or something?
I don't remember until lumped up. Now we're up to 1977, and that was a year for Foghat. If you were a fan of Foghat, that was the year. Foghat Live would be released, and it's one of the best live albums ever. It's their best-selling album ever.
Yeah.
Okay. It would get to number 11 on Billboard charts. And again, produced by Nick Jameson. It was recorded May 10th, 1977. At the Dune Arena in Henrietta, New York.
Wow.
It was released on August 10th, 1977. This live album caught the band at its peak.
Yeah.
Okay. Really, if you don't know Foghat, if you're watching this show and you're like, I never heard of these fucking guys,
you should listen to this album.
Get this album. Start here, and maybe get Fool for the City after that, and work your way back. Foghat Live is
funny. I heard this album when we did that show about 5 live albums that
right.
You must have. I think that's what they do. I'm surprised you haven't thrown in one of those yet for the new schedule.
Yeah, well, we will.
You know?
I got to come up with some more live records. But I mean, listening to that album, I know you're not a big connoisseur in Foghat, but when you heard it. What'd you think, right?
Fantastic. One of the best albums I heard.
I mean, it's what a live album is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing cheesy about it. It's just like kick ass, balls out. And I have to say something, and I don't know if anybody listening out there will pay attention. There's a band called Nashville Pussy.
Yeah.
That I love. Okay, they've been around for 25 years. I love them.
Get them on the Percent Show.
We should try. Any fans of Nashville Pussy out there, or anybody that knows Nashville Pussy, please tell them to cover a Foghat song.
Oh, that'd be
They always do somebody cool, and their name is after a Ted Nugent song, okay? And Double Live Gonzo when he says, "How about all that Nashville pussy out there?" Okay, so I mean, it these guys need to cover Foghat. I just want to say that. Next album will be called Stone Blue. Okay, and it was their 7th studio album. I mean, these guys were just pumping out.
Yeah, they were pumping out. That's what I'm saying. How many
1978. Okay, it was released in May of that year. It got to number 25, and the title track would go top 40. It was kind of their last, well, not kind of, it was their last real hit record.
Yeah.
Okay. Stone Blue, Robert Johnson's Sweet Home Chicago, their version of it is fucking mind-blowing. Easy Money.
Yep.
Elmore James's It Hurts Me Too. Okay, those are all standouts on that album.
Oh, hell
this
yeah.
is a band that, and though they're very different, but bands like the Ramones, bands like the Cramps, that would take a cover song and make it their own. When Foghat did it, like Sweet Home Chicago, you didn't need to hear the original anymore because it's like that's the fucking version. Elmore James, It Hurts Me Too.
That's like Ike Turner and Tina when they took over Proud Mary. I think that version is superior to any other version.
Yeah, I mean, it got to a point with Proud Mary where people didn't even remember Creed's version.
They didn't remember.
Now, after 1978 and Stone Blue, Foghat sales began to slip. Music was changing.
Yeah.
And punk and new wave were making inroads into what a lot of 70s hard rock acts were in. Okay.
100%.
Now, Boogie Motel would be the 8th studio album released by
Boogie
Foghat
Motel, baby.
in September of 79.
Okay, the Boogie.
Mostly it was self-produced. Boogie Motel is a little bit more pop-oriented. Still, it's got some solid tracks like Somebody Been Sleeping in My Bed. Okay. That's not good when that happens. Okay. And then there's a track on there that's sort of a ballad called Third Time Lucky, which is a fantastic song. Okay. I made that song of the night recently or something like that. Third Time Lucky. The album also has some saxophone playing by Alto Reed on it. Okay. Guitarist Rod Price was not happy with the direction the band was going.
Yeah.
Now, he would leave the band in November of 1980, but by February 1981, he would be replaced by Eric Cartwright. But before he would leave, he'd make one last album. Rod Price, great guitar player. He's since passed. But people should look back at his work in Foghat and definitely give this guy like a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
So he's fantastic. Okay, now, this is what I was saying in the beginning of the show. His last album was called Tight Shoes, and it was released in May of 1980. And it kind of had a new wave influence, this album, okay? And Price didn't like that. All right, so this would be the end with him. It was recorded at Foghat Studios, which was a new thing, in Port Jefferson out on Long Island. Okay, it was produced by Tony Altita and Don Berman and Foghat. They all co-produced it.
Wow.
The track Loose Ends and Baby Can I Change Your Mind are two personal favorites that I have. The album only got to number 106. It really didn't do that well. Fans
but that's because they changed the way, right? They changed. They go new way.
Well, sounds were changing. You had that. Okay, that was across the board. Music was changing. People didn't want to hear these long jam fucking bands anymore. Okay, not that Foghat was really. I mean, they had songs that were long and jams, but they were heavy in a way that it wasn't like Led Zeppelin, Moby Dick with a 20-minute guitar solo. They didn't do that. Okay.
You know what the problem also was? By them changing the sound, a lot of the fans felt like, what the hell's going on? And they probably didn't buy the album. So
I think people were like, listen, they're changing. It's done.
They were let down.
Yeah, they were let down. It only got to number 106. But Tight Shoes is an interesting album. It has a picture of a pair of like Converse All-Stars on the front cover. Okay. Price would leave a few months after this album was put out. He would be replaced by guitarist Eric Cartwright. And the next album would be called Girls to Chat and Boys to Bounce. All right. Nick Jameson was brought back to produce this, and it did slightly better. It got to number 92 on the Billboard charts. It was released in July of 1981. Now, the lone single was called Live Now, Pay Later, and it peaked at number 102. If you ask me, you should have put the song Wide Boy. Okay, that really showed their new wave influences, and Nick Jameson kind of is on keyboards on that. Okay, and he's doing some backing vocals as well. That's the best song on the album, Wide Boy. If you heard it, Lonesome Dave sings it, but you wouldn't even know it was Foghat. Very cool song.
Wow.
It's very different. It's kind of like new wave-ish, light punk, power pop kind of. I don't know. I just like it. I always kind of like that song. Now, on October 18th, 1982, Foghat released In the Mood for Something Rude. And it's a collection of, basically it's a cover album. It's a take on a lot of like R&B and country tracks written by other people.
But didn't every band do that at one point? Like everybody just did a cover. Like, you know who Weezer did an album like that? Like Weezer did an album with all covers. It was all
they covered Africa.
Yeah, they covered everything. Africa and Take On Me. It was crazy. They did everything.
Oh God, Take On Me. Oh God. So this album, they got covers by James Brown, Smokey Robinson, Jimmy Lewis, classic blues and R&B guys. And they put their kind of style on it. The album cover is very cool. It just says Foghat in the mood for something rude in the Foghat logo, and there's like a 80s metal chick with spiked hair on the cover. It's just like typical 80s kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. Again, produced by Nick Jameson and Tony Altita.
So Nick Jameson was coming back and forth.
He was with them for most of the stuff in that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Nick Jameson is as much of Foghat as the members are.
But he wasn't a Foghat. He was just a guy that came in. Producer.
And he played on some of the stuff in the studio. But like he plays bass on Slow Ride, Fool for the City, but really in the mythology and the legacy of Foghat, Nick Jameson is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Big part of it.
Well, they got him here. That's a past member too.
Yeah, technically, because he did. I think he did a couple of live shows.
Okay,
but in the studio and when he was producing, especially before Craig McGregor was in the band.
Yeah.
When Tony Stevens left, when they were doing Slow Ride and Fool for the City, Nick came in and did. Listen, I'll do everything. Fool for the City is one of their best albums. He plays bass on almost all of it.
He probably did it. He probably was like one of those guys that if we got into a jam, can you do it? Yeah. So he already knew the songs and stuff.
Yeah, he was.
Why not?
He was. Unfortunately, after this album, In the Mood for Something Rude, Craig McGregor would hang it up. He quit the band.
Yeah.
Okay. The next album was called Zigzag Walk. It was released in May of 1983, and it kind of featured a rockabilly sound to some of their music. Okay. Paul Butterfield of the Paul Butterfield Band was brought in to play harmonica on the Lonesome Dave song 7 Day Weekend.
Yeah.
The album produced again by Nick Jameson.
Yep.
He had some bass and keyboard duties on that album as well. It would peak at 192.
Yeah.
They only took it to 200, so they barely scratched it.
But I can see why James to play the keyboard with that new sound. Everybody had like a keyboard.
And at this point, things were so bad that Nick Jameson went by an alias.
Oh yeah.
On the album, he didn't say it was produced by Nick Jameson. He said it was produced by Franz Liebkin. And the keyboards was Eli Jenkins, but it was him. But it was Nick Jameson. Right. Okay, things were not looking too good for Foghat at this point. Zigzag Walk was a problem. Okay, now Kenny Aronson, who would be known as a famous bass player, he played with Dust, with Mark Bell, who became Marky Ramone. But Kenny Aronson's played with a lot of people. And also a Rob Alter had bass duties between 1983 and 1984. Craig McGregor would come back, though, in 1984. But Foghat would briefly disband shortly after that in 1984 after Lonesome Dave Peverett left and returned to England.
Yeah.
Roger Earl, Craig McGregor, and Eric Cartwright, who had replaced Rod Price, reformed with a new singer named E.J. Bergeson and would tour into the early 90s with that lineup.
Wow.
Okay. Now, at this time in the early 90s, there was a separate Foghat band. So there was two bands playing. I hate when this happens.
There were
Two bands
Foghat.
at the same time. You had something called Lonesome Dave Peverett's Foghat. Came back. Okay. And it featured ex-members of Wild Cherry. Play that funky music, white boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Molly Hatchet.
Yeah.
And ex-members of Hall & Oates, their backing band. Okay. Their rhythm section, actually. Okay. Guitar and, bass and drums were playing with Lonesome Dave. Now, this would go on for a little while, but in 1993, producer Rick Rubin got involved. And he urged the original band to get back together.
Yeah, you gotta get back together.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, Rubin couldn't be available to produce a new album.
A new album.
I believe he was working with Johnny Cash at that point.
Ooh.
Okay. But they put an album out anyway. It was called Return of the Boogeymen. And it was that year in 1993. Nick Jameson and they brought back Nick Jameson and Tom Dawes.
Wow.
From the Circle, Tom Dawes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, signed now to Modern Records, they released 12 tracks on the album, including new versions of I Just Want to Make Love to You and Take Me to the River.
Now,
5 out of the 12 tracks were originals, and the album was a heavy rock, back to form kind of thing. Okay. The band hit the road and would record their second live album, Road Cases, in 1998. In 1999, they put out a King Biscuit Flower Hour live CD, okay, from 74 and 76. Now, the King Biscuit Flower Hour was a British show on the radio that people would hear live shows of different bands. Motorhead did one. So many people did them, and they would put them out on vinyl or record or CD. Okay. Rod Price in 1999 would retire. Okay. And they would bring in Brian Bassett from Wild Cherry, who played with Dave Peverett before Foghat got back together.
Okay.
He would be playing on guitar. Now, at this point, Lonesome Dave Peverett was suffering from kidney cancer.
Oh, shit.
Okay, but he was a dedicated performer, and he even did some shows right after getting chemo.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the guy would get chemo and go on stage. Imagine that. Okay. Sadly, though, on February 7th, 2000, he would pass away at the age of 56.
Yeah, that was young.
Shit, that's only this couple years for us, man. 56. One of the best frontmen you'll ever see. Now, Charlie Hewen, who played with Ted Nugent and Humble Pie, was brought in to replace him on lead vocals on guitar. Now, the result was an album called The Family Jowls, Joules, Jowls album, released in 2003. The first album without Peverett and with new guitarist Brian Bassett on guitar. The album didn't chart at all, okay? But music was changing at the point.
Yeah.
It didn't matter so much, okay? It's a very bluesy album, and it was self-produced.
Yeah.
It featured some extra live tracks in the 2010 reissue. One was a live version of Sweet Home Chicago. Roger Earl and Tony Stevens are the only two originals on this album.
Members, right.
Yeah. Now, March 22nd, 2005, ex-guitarist and founding member of Foghat, Rod Price, passed away. Now, he died from a fall, and it was related to a heart attack. He had a heart attack. He fell
and died.
Yeah. Now, later that year, original bassist Tony Stevens left and was replaced by former bassist Craig McGregor.
So another guy. So this was like a revolving door almost.
It was a revolving door. The 2010 version of Foghat consisted of Roger Earl, Craig McGregor, Charlie Hune, and Bassett. Okay. Now, former Rainbow and Black Sabbath drummer Bobby Rodinelli had temporarily replaced Roger Earl for a short time while he got some surgery. Okay. But their next album, Last Train Home, released June 15th, 2010, was a culmination of a dream that Roger Earl and the late Lonesome Dave Peverett had. They wanted to put their favorite blues songs down, okay? And a few originals were thrown in, okay? It also features American bluesman Eddie Kirkland and he was a close friend of the original band. In 2013, they released a live DVD, also called Live in St. Pete.
St. Pete?
Yeah. Now, in June of 2016, winding down here, they released Under the Influences. It was the 17th studio album by Foghat.
Wow, that's
they brought back Kim Simmons from Savoy Brown.
Yeah.
Okay. And he makes an appearance on the title track, and he gets a writing credit as well. They also covered a Savoy Brown track called Make Up My Mind. There's also a new version of Slow Ride on that album, featuring Nick Jameson again on bass. Okay. Now, the band launched at that point a Pledge Music campaign, and this album is entirely fan funded. That's how a lot of people have been doing things these days, you know.
They get funded by
the fans. Yeah. Okay. And the album debuted at number 170 on Billboard Hard Rock charts, and it peaked at number 40 on the independent album charts. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay. Foghat released another live album called Live at the Belly Up in June 2017. Now, sadly, on July 9th, Eric Cartwright, who played lead guitar, replacing Rod Price, from 1981 to 84, died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
He was 66. A lot of these guys died young.
They all died young.
Yep.
They live fast, die young.
Testament to national health care in England. Okay. Longtime bassist Craig McGregor, unfortunately, was also diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in 2015. The cancer was first detected at an early stage in 2012, but he was not informed about this until 2015, 3 years later. Right? Now, following this incident, he became an outspoken proponent of a DC bill that would require physicians to communicate test results with patients right away.
Yeah.
Okay, promptly. Now, although officially still a member of Foghat, the effects of chemotherapy made him kind of unable to play.
Yeah.
He was replaced on tour with Rodney O'Quinn, and sadly, McGregor would die February 9th, 2018. Another one. The pandemic delayed Foghat until July of 2021, when the lineup of Roger Earl, Bassett, Hune, O'Quinn released a live record called 8 Days on the Road. And in January 2022, Charlie Hune retired and was replaced by singer Scott Holt, who became the new singer and guitarist of Foghat. And that's where we're at today.
Wow.
They're still around.
They're
still playing. They will be around this year. I just checked out their website, and they've been on tour through the Midwest and the West Coast. God bless them. I know it's not the original lineup, but everybody should check them out.
Yeah.
They're a great band. Just for Roger Earl, give it to him. All right, he's still out there doing it.
Unbelievable. What a history, man. What a history. What a legacy. And bunch of top 40 albums, man.
Yeah. And I gotta give a shout out to an old buddy of mine named John Barbero. John is a guy I've known since I'm about 13 years old. I'm going to send this podcast to him. He really turned me on to what Foghat was about. And, of course, I went on to know a lot more and get into it and know all these things. But he kind of, he was like, you got to hear Foghat live.
Yeah, Foghat live.
And you got to hear Fool for the City. And I was like, okay. And, I was a kid. I was into, like, all different things.
And
I didn't know
what into it.
First guy I ever smoked a joint with, too.
Oh, shit.
There you go. All right. So, very cool. John, thank you. And his beautiful wife, Angela. And, we're at another end of a rock show. And what's this, 162?
161.
161. Amazing.
161.
Amazing. So where can we find you, Rob?
You can find me anywhere in the interweb at Getting Lumped Up. If you go into the interweb or the interbox or wherever you go to find your information and you click in Getting Lumped Up, I will pop in like a fucking bad virus.
See his big head coming in here.
Smooth, nice.
Smooth.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh, I'm as bald as
Oh
him.
my God.
Oh,
this is an outrage.
Yeah. If you're looking for me, motherfuckers, I'm on Instagram, RockerMike212. I'm on Clout Hub as RockerMike. I'm on MeWe as RockerMike.
You're back on Twitter.
I'm back on Twitter, RockerMike212 on Twitter. I am back, now on Truth Social as RockerMike. I am on Getter as RockerMike. Lots of RockerMike out there. And don't forget Facebook, RockerMike, because they won't let me be RockerMike. I got to be RockerMike.
RockerMike.
And, my Italian side. And then I'm also on Facebook for the Rock Show podcast group page.
13,000 members.
Plenty of members. Is it 13? I don't think it's that many.
1,300.
1,300. Yeah, whatever. Okay. But check us out, sign up, like us, all that stuff.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Don't forget. If you're watching us on here.
And remember to go to your dentist. Can you give the information of the dentist one more time?
I can. We're talking about Park Dental Care. He's a kick-ass dentist. Richmond Hill, Queens, if you're out in Queens. 12419 101st Avenue. His number is 718-847-3800. The guy takes all insurances.
Do we have a website for him? I think it was.
Yes, 718 Dentist. It's not dentists. It's dentist. DENTIST.com.
.com. Go.
Yes.
Go get your teeth checked.
Get
so
your
you can
teeth
have a nice
fixed.
smile. Yeah.
Like me.
Look at that.
Yeah. All right.
And on that note,
thank you for watching. We love you.
We love you. Only on Tuesday.
I love you every day.
And then that
we couldn't do this without the fans.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't get drunk. Get lumped up.
Get lumped up.
See you next week.
Take care.
That was good.
Get lumped up tonight. Listen to Rob Rossi and RockerMike.